Hey reader, welcome back to the channel. This is Centaur here, and today we are starting a new series. First of all, Happy New Year. 2026 is going to have a few changes here. We're going to do some new stuff here on the channel, one of which is our new series called So You Wanna Play. And in order to explain what this series is, we're going to compare it to the other long-running series that we have here. Obviously, we have our Army Ranking and Review series, where we look at the options that are available and how strong the options available are you across all categories, okay? Which is not how likely you are to win with something, it's how strong the options are that you have to try to win with something. The second series that we have going on is our Good, Bad, Murky series, where we look at unit profiles, we look at special rules and stuff like that to determine whether they are good, whether they are in general bad, or whether it's pretty murky. It all depends on way too many factors than we can objectively review. We have our third series, which is the In Defensive series, and this is for units that are really good, but nobody uses them, and people should be using them more, and it's my apologetic for why you should actually go about doing it. So You Wanna Play is kind of like the In Defensive series, except that it's not necessarily a good unit that nobody uses. Instead, it's a focus on units that people say don't work, they're bad in the current meta, they're not the kinds of things that are going to bring about success, they're just a meme, right? But somebody says, but I like them, so I would like to use them. And it's me sitting down, hearing enough of those requests on a specific unit and saying, so you want to play a Tiger 1? Okay, this is how I would play it. And so I'm starting with the Tiger. We're going to be starting mostly with big armor, okay, as we're going to be starting in the series. But if you have thoughts on other stuff that you would like to see beyond the big artillery pieces and the big armor, which is the ones we're going to be starting with, because that's the ones everybody calls a meme and says don't work because of simple rote reasons, and they're probably right to some extent. But we're going to start with those. And we'll see how it goes. And if you have other thoughts on things that you would like to see, let me know down in the comments below. And we'll just line them up and queue them up. The plan is to make this part of our Wednesday content that'll be going on regularly here at the channel. And so, yeah, I have plenty of spaces for the foreseeable future for you to make new recommendations. Just remember, the rule about So You Wanna Play as a series is it can't be stuff people are running all the time, okay? The Panzer II, the Panzer III, heck, the Panzer I will never get a video as part of the So You Wanna Play series, okay? They'll probably get individual ones on the Good, Bad, Murky series because at some point we need to talk about the fact that these are really good tanks. But So You Wanna Play is reserved for stuff that people in general tell you not to run, but you want to run anyway, okay? So, with all of that out of the way, let's do what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about why these things are rarely run. Okay, kind of similar to what we do with the In Defensive series. We're then going to talk about what they offer you. So, if you want to put them into your army, the kind of role that they should be fulfilling, and thus what you need to plan around when you're building your list. Because unsurprisingly in this series, all of these are going to require you to say, okay, you're going to buy this, and now we're going to build the rest of your army around that to cover over its weaknesses or play to its strengths. Okay? Then we're going to look at a recommended list at 1,000 points. How I would run it if I was going to an event and using this as like a challenge run of, Aaron, you have to go to this event, but you have to run a Tiger 1 or a KV 1 or a Churchill or whatever it is that we're going to be reviewing. Okay. And I'd say this would be my list. This is how I would run it. And then we're going to look at how the list should perform. Okay. The strategy behind it. And then we're going to jump from strategy down to tactics. And we're going to be examining, based on the scenario, blow by blow, the moves that I would be doing to try to win the primary 6 scenarios in the core rulebook. Now, obviously, when you go to an event, oftentimes they're going to look a little bit different. But a lot of the building blocks for scenarios that people use are fundamentally going to look something like these 6 scenarios, right? Whether you're using the Commander's Compendium, whether you're using the Zern Mission Pack, whether you're using Bolt Action Alliance Pack, whether you're using, the Juggernaut Pack or anything else like that, whatever the scenarios are, they're going to roughly look like these, and you might just have to mix and match a couple of them in order to make up what the actual scenario rules are. But this is how I would go about doing it. And then at the end, we're going to close out with, if you have more than 1,000 points and you're jumping up to 1,250 or something like that, how would I change the list and what considerations should we make? So to start out with, why don't people ever run Tiger 1s? Or more accurately, if they do run them, why do people go into events thinking they're not going to win? Well, first of all, at 330 points regular, even more, almost 400 points veteran, it's a big investment, right? So like, I mean, at 1,000 points, that's literally a third of your army, right? It's 3 points off of one third of your army. Well, three and a third, right? Points off of one third of your army. That's a lot. And since it only has the one big gun, a coaxial machine gun, and a forward-facing hull-mounted machine gun, if it isn't doing much for you, I mean, a third of your army didn't show up to play, right? And so that's one big issue. If you look at it from like how hard it is to make back your investment in points, it's extremely difficult to do, right? Like unless you're able to knock out like 3 light tanks or 4 tankettes or 4 or even 5 armored cars, right? Like, depending on what kind of stuff people are looking at, there's a very high chance you're not going to make your points back. And remember that when you start getting tankettes and armored cars, one, that means you're hitting and wounding almost every single turn, regardless of hit modifiers, regardless of any of that. And it assumes that if they have Recce, they've either already activated or you shot at them, triggered Recce with something else, and then you hit them with the Tiger one, right? So like, just when you look at it from an investment standpoint, making your points back is extremely hard to do with this, okay? It is also very easy to pin down, especially if you're not taking it veteran, because if it's inexperienced or regular, they just throw AT rifles and light auto cannons, any AT gun at it, and they're not even trying to remove it. They're just trying to pin it down so that it'll either fail its order test or maybe it's at least hitting with a -1 and thus more likely to miss than it would otherwise do, right? And so it makes it really hard to work around. Again, like I'm not disagreeing with any of these. I think in general all of these are really good points and good reasons from the optimizer crowd to say don't run this thing, okay? But we're going to work through it because multiple people told me they want to play a Tiger one. Okay, so we're making this video. Okay, here we are. And then we start getting into some of the stuff that you can fix, but it does make it quite difficult. So often it has a very low order dice count. Very commonly, when running a Tiger 1 at 1,000 points, you're going to be looking at 12 order dice or even less. I've seen some, armies that have been put together. They got some cool tools, but they only got like 8 order dice. And at 1,000 points, that means you going to get easily 3-4 activations from the opponent before your first activation. If they all throw pins on the Tiger's not doing anything for their match. If they're throwing stuff at transports loaded with guys, if they're throwing stuff at, supporting fire teams or infantry that have to foot slog, forward deploying Gebersjäger units or whatever, like, they're going to wipe a bunch of stuff out before you even get to activate your first thing, right? And that's problematic. It's even more problematic if they run up, they claim objectives with those first things, and now you got to try to push people off of those objectives having already suffered a bunch of pins towards yourself, right? So like all of that's problematic. It typically also means that you're making sacrifices in order to run this, right? You're supporting fire is taking a beating. You don't have as many machine guns, artillery, flak protection, things like that in order to keep you safe. It means you're probably dipping on infantry. You're more likely to be running inexperienced shirkers than you are veterans with submachine guns because the points have to be spent somewhere. Or it could be that you're suffering low, quality armor to support it. Or, and I didn't even mention this because it was kind of mentioned the point above, or you're trying to keep all those things, but you now only have like 8 or 9 or 10 order dice, right? In which case, now your really nice, awesome submachine gun guys might not do very well because they got a bunch of pins on them and maybe they fail order tests or they're hitting with that extra -1 to hit, which is not great, right? And I look at all 5 of these reasons and I tell myself, that's a very good reason not to run a Tiger 1. So glad that it's not my playstyle to run Tiger 1s because I would look at this typically and say, I don't want to. Okay. So you want to play a Tiger 1? Let's break all of these. The list we're going to present to you is going to cover over all of these problems, more or less, okay? And here's how we're going to do it. So what does the Tiger 1 offer you? Well, first of all, it gives you a super heavy anti-tank gun, which means even if you're not a Panzer Ace, right? If you want to take it regular instead of veteran, which by the way is how I would recommend taking the Tiger, more on that below, okay? If you end up running the Tiger with the super heavy AT gun and you hit, the chance likelihood that you're cracking open the enemy armor and doing real damage, if not double damage, is extremely high, right? I mean, it's 2s for full damage against DV7 and DV8 tanks, which is the overwhelming majority of tanks that you are likely to face. It is a 2 to wound is glancing damage on a DV9, okay? And all of those together make up 90% easily of the number of tanks you're ever going to see. A 3 is going to be double damage on a DV7. A 4 is going to be double damage against a DV8, and a 5 is going to be double damage against a DV9. At that point, you are going to crack it open, okay? It is probably going to be removed, one shot, one kill, okay? It also does have 2 German machine guns, or a machine gun with a 3-inch HE template. So when it comes to removing infantry, it's actually pretty good at doing removal against small infantry teams. 8 shots with machine guns is going to be a good number of hits, good number of wounds, okay, which is good. And so even if they have cover saves, you might be popping 1 or even 2 guys off of that small team, and at that point, might be a morale test or might even be completely gone. So if you need to be able to pick up order dice for infantry, you can do that. If you're going up against a big squad, at least you're going to pin them down, and you probably remove a couple bodies, right? You're going to be a winnowing force, which for a big armored vehicle that's primarily designed as a tank brawler is actually not that bad. At DV10, you are a likely survivor in a match as long as you're not crazy and running things really close up to a Panzerfaust or a super heavy AT gun or a heavy AT gun. You're actually pretty likely to survive, right? I mean, assuming that they're not at point blank range, a medium AT gun is going to bounce off of you on a 4 or lower, right? From a damage perspective. A medium AT gun is, even at point blank range, is only likely to glance you or better on a 4+. That's a 50-50 chance that them closing to point blank range against you, where you have a really good chance of opening them up, regardless of whatever it is that has that medium AT gun, even a Churchill at point blank range, you are very likely to open up, right? Even if they get that close, 50-50 chance it does nothing other than the pin to you. That's all it does, right? And that's fantastically good. It also is just going to shrug off a lot of damage from the cheap heavy weapons, right? Even rear shots at point blank range, okay? You're going to shrug off a lot of damage. Might be an issue, right? A light autocannon or a heavy autocannon at point blank range from the rear, getting that extra +3 to penetration could do damage to you. But remember, full damage is only on a 6. It's not that big, right? And then finally, it's a centerpiece model, right? This is a great thing for kind of building around because of the fact that it gives you a solid option against armor, a decent option against infantry, as long as you can set it up for recce's, right? That's the only thing. You have to be able to set it up, have something else attack, perform the recce maneuver, and then this thing follows up and hits it, okay? So what would my list look like? Here's what I would do, and it even comes up 3 points short. You have 3 points to play with if you want to, okay? First thing, going from high command, we are taking a company commander with a pistol, inexperienced. We're also going to take a Kubelwagen. Most of the time, he's going to be in there with them. Next, we have the rifle platoon. The rifle platoon, we're going to have a platoon commander with a pistol, inexperienced. We're going to have 4 Spottruppen taken with the Gebersjäger and Infiltrator upgrade for 60 points. I am not one of the people who believes Spottruppen are an auto-include. I know some people really love it. For this specific strategy, we need these guys, and you'll see why later, okay? They are absolutely necessary for running a Tiger army, okay? Because of the fact that we're going to need that mobility. We're going to need things starting further up, and we're going to need something that's pretty durable that can get across the battlefield, okay? We're going to take 4 Felgendarmerie with pistols, inexperienced. We're going to take 5 Strafe Battalion Shirker man squads, 2 of those. But in a move that's going to surprise some people, but that I think is the best decision, we're not going to take these inexperienced for 25 points each. We're going to take these regular, 40 points each. Okay, more on that a little bit later. And then we're going to take an anti-tank rifle team, regular, for 25 points. And that moves us over into the armor platoon. For the armor platoon, we're going to take a Panzer IV Tiger I as our platoon commander. We're going to take him regular. This is only going to be 330 points. We're saving some points here. But the big thing, and the primary reason why we're taking him as the platoon commander, is that in case the company commander has to be elsewhere for some of the scenarios, I wanted to at least have that extra +1 morale. In reality, though, I would really like for him to be near the company commander. We won't be able to snap him because he's a platoon commander, but that's fine because the snap is going to be used for things that are going to set the stage for the Tiger I. We just want to make sure the Tiger I is reliably activating when he needs to, and he's passing the order test, so that way he's not going down, he's not reversing. We certainly don't want him running off the battlefield. Okay, that would be really, really bad. We're going to escort him with 2 Panzer IIs. I wish we could take the Panzer II looks. We don't have the points, okay? And so because of that, we're just taking them as straight Panzer IIs. Which is fine. Really good escorts for a Tiger I. And then we've got the heavy weapons platoon. This one, we have the platoon commander with a pistol, inexperienced. He's going to be leading 2 inexperienced heavy mortars as our required heavy weapons. And then we're going to have 3 more AT rifle teams. And this brings us to a very respectable 17 order dice at 1,000 points. So we've already checked off the first box. Low order dice count, check. gone. Okay. We've also checked off the box for not having enough quality supporting fire. We've got double heavy mortars, which is fantastic for going after enemy artillery piece, team weapons, or just dropping on the heads of armored vehicles or big infantry sections just to try to winnow them down. We've got 4 AT rifle teams providing us with supporting fire from the rear. We've got 2 rifle sections that are 5-man regular rifle sections. So they have 24-inch range. Pretty good chance you're going to do a pin, no -1 to hit off of them. And as long as we keep them within 6 inches of the Felgund Armory unit, we ignore the Shirker requirement of having to pass the order test, any order test that we do, even if we don't have pins. And even if we do have to perform order tests in order to activate, we're starting on a morale of 9, and we're not doubling the pins for the purposes of making that order test or morale test, all of which is fantastic. So we're more than likely to pass the test. We've got 1, 2, 3 morale bubbles in addition to the Panzer 1, in addition to the Tiger 1 is running around, which is fantastic. We have a forward deploying unit. We even have a Kubelwagen for some zippy transporting in case we need it, and the ability to carry something like, say, an AT rifle along with a platoon commander or something like that inside of it, which is a great way to run a Kubelwagen. And so, on the whole, like, obviously, we don't have flak protection. Like, that's the one thing. Couldn't fit in a machine gun team. Sorry. I would have had to drop 2 of the AT rifle teams and make some other changes elsewhere. Drop probably a Strafe battalion unit down or something like that in order to add one in. I did not feel like that was worth it. You are vulnerable to aircraft. Okay. I'm trying here, guys. Okay. I had 330 points locked into 1 tank. Okay. I'm trying. Okay. But this is where I would start it. And so now we'll take a look at what this should do. First of all, from a vehicle hunting perspective, because you're going to need to do some of that in the game, the Tiger's going to be tackling the big armor. You can try to pin it down with the AT rifles if they aren't veteran, because you got 4 of them, right? Which means on average, if you put 2 on one side of the battlefield, 2 on the other, you're going to find the 2 of them shooting at them. Maybe you have a platoon commander snap them. On average, on a 4+, one of them's going to hit. So you're going to put at least 1 pin on there before the Tiger ends up going. Panzer IIs are for hunting armor down. They can chase them down. They can start shooting at things. They're also there just to protect the Tiger, right? If you keep them flanking the Tiger, so that way, they're just a couple inches away, anything that tries to get to that side or rear arc is going to be coming closer to a light autocannon. And that light autocannon can then not only provide heavy cover for the side of the Tiger, which is awesome because there's a good chance it's just going to bounce off, but it's not like it then targets the Panzer II, and potentially removes that. In addition, now the Panzer II can maneuver around and can try shooting at the side or the rear, possibly at point blank range of whatever it is that was coming after the Tiger, right? So we're going to be using these guys as a pack. The Tiger 1's going to be going in the middle. The Panzer IIs are going to flank a couple inches away, so you have plenty of room to pivot and turn as needed, okay? But they're going to be able to hunt down and go after stuff that's going after the big dog in the middle, okay? You're going to be using your Snap 2 with your company commander to pin things down in advance of the Tiger 1 going. And then when the Tiger 1 goes, things are going to be pinned. There's a good chance that if they do shoot back at you, they're more likely to miss, which is fantastic because we need to keep pins off of this thing. But then this thing's going to move up. It's going to punch. It's going to hit really hard. And if you don't have to move it, if it's right there and you can hit on that 3+ with your AT gun, 4+ even if you have pins on you, which is fine. That's a really, really good chance because, again, pen +7, it's not like you need to be at point blank range in order to remove stuff. You can typically do removal by sitting back even 30 inches, 36 inches away from people, okay? You got your infantry hunting. You're going to be using your AT rifles to just pin down and possibly remove infantry because if they do hit, they are pretty likely to do a wound. Cover saves are what they're going to be. You've got your infantry for doing pins down range and helping just to lock people down. You've got your Panzer IIs. You also have your heavy mortars just to finish. If we can lock things down so they have to rally or go down in order to avoid being removed, that's exactly what a heavy mortar wants because as more turns they have, more chances of being able to range in, okay? For camping, we've got our heavy mortars to kind of force the campers to move. Okay, get off of where they are. So people are trying to sit objectives, we can move them off. Sniper teams are going to be less effective. Forward observers are going to be less effective. Anybody who has infiltrator as a special rule, they don't want to be running. They don't want to be advancing because then they don't get that bonus to their cover saves. We want them to keep moving. And we've got things like heavy mortars. We've got auto cannons. We've got AT rifles to kind of help finish off once people get down to 2 models or less. If they're down to 1, that's also good too. And then from a morale bubbles perspective, we keep the company commander by the Tiger II and Panzer IIs as much as possible. You might need to run him somewhere else. It's possible. Things could be threatening him. We need him to be safe. We need to move him out of the way. Fair enough. But in general, we need him next to it because a Panzer II with some pins on it is fine to keep attacking, because the -1 to hit is not going to matter nearly as much when you have an autocannon or a 4-shot machine gun. For a Tiger 1, it's not going to matter that much, because as long as we continue attacking, darn, we're shooting on the 4s, maybe 5s, with our attacks, depending on if we can move up to point blank range, various stuff, right? Like, there's just a bunch of different things in there. It's going to average out to around 4s, even with pins on it, which is perfectly serviceable, okay? We only need to do 3 hits, 3 wounds in order to really make stuff back. And when you have machine guns, the machine guns are going to be perfectly serviceable hitting on something like 5s, okay? That's perfectly okay. Platoon commanders should be near the supporting fire tools. There's one exception, where we're actually going to be intentionally throwing away a platoon commander, but there's a reason for that, okay? That's going to keep everybody else safe. It's going to work a lot better. And so now, as we get ready to go into the scenarios, we're going to start with Seek and Destroy, okay? The Tiger is going to be going after enemy armor. You can technically use him to remove an infantry squad here or there. That's also what the machine gun is for. We're going to assume that the Tiger is able to remove 1 to 2 units over the course of the game, which is, I think, a pretty conservative estimate. That assumes that your opponent's being pretty smart about protecting their stuff. They're getting cover. But I think removing 1 or 2 within a standard 6-7 turn game is perfectly reasonable. And we're going to assume you don't lose the Tiger, because most Tigers are not going to be lost unless the enemy gets really, really close, okay? Second, your Panzer II is going to be hunting enemy teams, and they're really, really light armor. We're going to assume that they're each going to remove 1 to 2 units, which is pretty reasonable with a light autocannon. That's very zippy. And we are going to assume you're going to lose 1 of the Panzer IIs, okay? So at present, we've removed 3 to 6 order dice. We've lost 1, okay? Now, your infantry squads and your AT teams, we are going to put these on ambush as often as possible, okay? Obviously, if they have a clear shot straight at something, you can technically take it. But the big reason why we're putting our infantry sections and our anti-tank teams on ambush is because if they're targeted by something, we can change that to a down order. Remember, with Seek and Destroy, we don't have to remove a lot of enemy units. We got to remove 2 more than they remove of us. So if they look at our list and they think, 4-man inexperienced Felgendarmerie unit, 2 5-man regular infantry sections, 4 2-man regular AT rifle teams, that stuff is going to be easy to remove. That's 7 in the bag plus officers, right? They're going to be assuming they can remove 10, 11 order dice. But if we're going down, especially if we're in heavy cover on stuff and we're getting a 2+ save, there's a very good chance they may only wipe out 3 or 4 of those. At which point, if we've removed, 3 to 6 of theirs and they've removed 4 to 5 of ours, we're still keeping competitive, and we haven't even talked about the mortars yet, right? We're going to be keeping the company commander in the Kubelwagen. We're going to keep them right behind the Tiger as much as possible. We keep him in the Kubelwagen because it means he's protected from a sniper. Snipers don't get their benefits against soft-skin transports, so they're not getting the extra +1 to wound, which is fantastic. We need to keep him safe from machine guns that just randomly open up on stuff. 6s to wound is actually quite difficult to do with machine guns reliably. And so we're going to be doing that. But most importantly, the company commander, you can jump him out to put him, say, behind a building or whatever. The important thing is he needs to be within 12 inches of the Tiger. So wherever the Tiger's going, we need him to be able to keep up. And so I would recommend you keep him in the Kubelwagen for this one, okay? And then just keep the car safe, okay? And then your heavy mortars, they're going to target fixed tools. We're going to remove, hopefully, 2, so 1 each on average. And we are going to assume that we're going to lose 1 to 2 of them. But the result is, if we can keep the number of AT teams and infantry squads that we lose to less than 4, we've won. If we lose 4 or even 5 of them, it depends on how many things we're able to remove with the armor. But we might still win, okay? And then obviously, if you're playing fast and loose and you end up losing a whole slew of these small units, you are going to lose this game, okay? But you now stand a chance on Seek and Destroy with a big tank of winning this match, as long as you can keep the math to this. When in doubt, go down. Unless, obviously, you're a unit that can't, or if you're a mortar that needs to continue firing, okay? For key positions, we will assume that there are 5 to 7 objectives, because that's how it's laid out, which means we will assume that 3 to 4 of them are going to be near us, okay, as a player. In general, you're going to have them kind of scattered, but relatively close to each player's board side, basically. And then it's just a question of which side you end up getting, and then from there, be able to, claim more than the enemy does, right? Because that's the only thing we're scoring, is you need to have more than everybody else. So before the game even begins, when we're deploying, Spottreppen need to deploy far up enough that they will be able to move to a central objective. We are going to move them on turn 1 with the first order dice that we get, pretty much. We are going to move them onto that central objective, one of the more central objectives, and we're going to flip it to our control. Okay, with 17 order dice, you also have a pretty good chance of going first, which is nice, okay? We're going to rush in there. 4-man veterans who have the infiltrator special rule, obviously on the first turn, is not going to help them unless they can deploy so that they're right next to one of those objectives, and if they can deploy within within range of scoring on an objective, because as you can see over there, at least in the base pack, there's no requirement that Infiltrator has to start beyond 12 inches of an objective. Okay, if you can deploy him right next to one, just activate him, tell him to go down, claim the objective, and go. Okay, ideally he would be in heavy cover there, so that way he's getting a nice 2+ cover save. It can be light cover though, because with the Infiltrator rule on a down order, that's still a 2+ save. Okay, and that's fantastic. And then relatively quickly after that, we're going to take a Tiger 1, and we're going to take our Tiger 1, and we're going to roll him onto that objective as quick as we can. We're going to perform a run order best we can to roll him right onto that same objective that the spot tripping unit's on. And what this is going to mean is that that objective cannot be flipped until the Tiger 1 is destroyed. It is, as we like to say in shorthand, contesting the objective. The Gebers Jaeger spot tripping unit can now move on again. Right? And if they're starting in a form of cover, like, a forest or a ruin or something else like that, which would kind of be an ideal one for them, because they have the Gebers Jaeger upgrade, they can treat that as open ground for themselves as regards moving. So you can run 12 inches to another objective and start claiming that one after the Tiger 1 has gotten it on, near the beginning of turn 2, right? Then the plan is any objectives that are close to you, your mortars and your AT rifles and your infantry sections are going to be claiming those, okay? They are not going to be advancing up. We do not need to move them close to the center of the board. We are going to keep them as far back as possible because they aren't very survivable, and we need to keep them alive. We want multiples on each objective as best we can, so that way if they remove one unit, they don't just slide in with a unit and claim it. They have to remove multiple units. And remember, going down is going to help us if we need to just stay alive. Go on ambush, go down as needed, okay? And then we're going to push up with an infantry ball of the Felgendarmerie and the Strafe Battalion units after your mortars, your Panzer IIs, and your Tiger clear an objective. So once they've pounded the snot out of people off of those things, that's when it's a safe time for you to start running the Felgendarmerie unit and the Strafe Battalion units near them up the board. If you can catch all three of those with a company commander and snap them so they're all moving together, that way there's no point where the Shirker rule is going to be kicking in for any of those, that would be fantastic. Okay. But if you can do that, remember, you only need 3 to 4 objectives. Okay. You only need half plus 1 out of all of them. And if that's the case, if the Tiger is parking 1, if you've got a ball of infantry, possibly supported by a Tiger 2, parking another one, and 2 more objectives on your side. Remember, you might have as many as 3 on your side, but let's just say you only have 2 that are near you, and you've camped those with like a mortar and 2 AT rifle teams each. That's the game, right? Now all you have to do is just not lose any of them. You've still got a Tiger 2, a Panzer 2 free to move around. You've still got, potentially the Kubelwagen ferrying around more platoon commanders. Like, you've got options for keeping all of these things running because we've got a durable DV-10 that can knock the lights out of stuff that tries to aggress against it very easily, parking one of the central objectives. And so I think this is actually eminently winnable. Okay, you can do it. You got to keep your units alive. Okay, you got to make sure you're punching first and only move up your softer units once it's safe. But if you can do that and really focus specific parts of the battlefield and don't worry about every objective, just worry about the bare minimum that actually matter and then hold those securely, I think you can win this one. When looking at top secret, it's technically number 4, but we're going to come back to number 3, which is breakthrough, a little bit later, okay? We're going to do all the ones that involve objectives in some way, shape, or form together here as a unit. When looking at top secret, this is obviously going to be different from key positions because in key positions, the objectives are stationary. They don't disappear. There's just a lot of stuff you need to think about that's different with top secret, okay? In this case, we want our spot trip to start near the center of the board. Now, this one does specify that, and you see it down there at the bottom right, note that in the scenario, all units, including infiltrators, must deploy more than 12 inches from the briefcase. This means the spot tripper are not going to be able to grab the objective at the beginning of the first turn. Okay, they will be too far away because they do not have horses. Horses can grab it the first turn. I couldn't fit in an SS cavalry unit. I couldn't fit in a Cossack unit. Just by the points, I just couldn't do it. So we don't have one. Okay, I wanted one, but it didn't happen. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to load up a platoon commander and an AT rifle team in the Kubelwagen as part of our deployment, okay? And then whether or not we're starting off the table or whether we're starting pre-positioned or anything else like that, the Kubelwagen is going to be the actual means we're going to have of dropping people off to claim the objective, okay? And what's going to happen is the armor is going to advance or run depending on whether you already started on the board or not, near to the objective to kind of screen the Kubelwagen. We need to keep the civilian car safe. And so you're going to build a cage. Tiger 1 is going to be the center of your thrust. He's going to be moving up basically head on almost toward that objective. And if he can overshoot it, even better. Okay. I would even consider don't even do an advance order and try shooting because you're going to not have a high chance of hitting in the first place. I would just do a run order. Just run it forward. Okay. If you need to, even turn him sideways if you need to, because in order to win this one, the Tiger doesn't need to survive. He can die. It's okay. You'll still win. Then the Panzer IIs are going to move up and they're going to jump so that they are basically flanking to form the rest of this little cage that we're going to be building. Okay? It's going to look kind of like this, right? With your Panzer I there at the top and then the Panzer IIs on either side. If they can advance and start shooting down range, fantastic. If they have to run just to get there, that's totally fine too. Doesn't matter. And then the Kubelwagen's going to kind of nest near there with the ability to be able to run the infantry out to grab the objective while keeping the Kubelwagen safe in heavy cover that's created by the tanks. Okay? And what's going to happen is then the AT rifle team is going to jump out and they're going to grab the objective. Okay? It's in a 2-man regular unit, but you know what? It's a small footprint, which means the number of places you need to be in order to see it is pretty darn small. Okay? And so we'll take that. And this is going to then force, your forcers are then just going to screen the AT team. On turn 2, the AT rifle team is going to jump back into the Kubelwagen. Okay? Kubelwagen won't be able to move because it's loading up the men. Okay? Which means I would just, save it for the last thing that you activate. Okay, you don't need to activate it. Okay, and then on the next turn, you're just going to perform a run order as quick as you can to get down range with the Kubelwagen, and everybody else is going to fall back. They're all going to retreat, and that's going to be your army. That's going to be literally the whole thing. And so what I would lead off with, if you possibly can, is first thing you want to activate, especially if you get the first dice, is you want to activate the company commander, activating the Tiger 1, both of the Panzer IIs, and the Kubelwagen. Okay? And you're going to send those 4 units. They're all going to move up. They're going to form the ball. The AT rifle team is still staying inside. Let the enemy just bounce rounds off of the armor. Let them destroy the armor. It doesn't matter. That just makes it impassable terrain, making it more difficult for people to reach you. It makes it heavy cover, still heavy cover for you, so it's still helping to protect the Kubelwagen. All of this is great. And a surprisingly high amount of line of sight to your Kubelwagen is going to be blocked as well, because the Tiger 1 and the Panzer IIs are quite tall by comparison to a little tiny civilian car. Okay? And he's going to run off. And once he runs off, you're done. That's the game, right? Nice and easy. So that's what I would do. Do also keep in mind, you need to run off of your own deployment zone edge. Deployment zone edge on a long base thing also includes 12 inches on either side. So you don't have to run necessarily straight down toward your long edge. It might be easier because there's more places where you can make the exit ramp, right? And so the enemy has to make more plans in terms of where they put their men in order to try to ambush you or try to remove you. But I think it could probably work. And so this is what I would do. That would be my strategy for Top Secret. Eminently winnable, okay? Mostly because we have 17 order dice, okay? When looking at demolition, this is the last one that involves the objectives that we need to be looking at. So this one's a little bit tricky. So first of all, Spottrippen, again, are going to deploy near the middle to threaten the objective, okay? They're going to be kind of bait. They're not actually what we're going to use to try to blow up the thing. They're going to be bait. We're going to throw them out there, and they're going to think, oh, no, I got to make sure these guys don't suddenly just swoop in and get to my HQ and try to blow it up, right? And so they're going to be throwing shots at them. Again, just deploy in heavy cover or light cover, doesn't matter. Make sure that you're in area terrain, though, so that way if people do try to attack you, you get to fight first, which is important. And then just go down if you need to be protected, okay, from being attacked. And then the Kubelwagen, we're going to put an outflank with the company commander and an anti-tank rifle team. Again, the AT rifle teams are going to be coming in really handy here. If you want to, you can make a change. You can put your company commander and both platoon commanders in this Kubelwagen. That is also a viable strategy for the reasons that everybody can imagine that's watching this video. Okay, you know exactly why this is happening. Okay, I personally prefer the AT rifle team, and there's a reason for that. We'll talk about that later. What's going to happen is the Tiger 1 is then going to move up, and it's going to begin it's going to sit basically 1 inch away from your objective. Okay, it's going to be sitting in the back there. So it's got some nice lines of fire because we're going to need that firepower for going into it. Take advantage of the fact that your standard range is 42 inches. Your long range is 84 inches. You do not need to get close to the enemy to be pounding away with Pen +7. You will drop to Pen +6 if they are 43 inches or more, if they're more than 42 inches from you. And there's a good chance that won't be the case if you're within 1 inch of your HQ objective, okay? And what this is designed to do, the reason why you're within 1 inch of it, is that it means there's a whole half of the semicircle around that you would score in that you actually physically cannot get to because you have to stay beyond an inch of the tiger, right? So the tiger's basically making it so that half of the ways the enemy could swoop units in to try to blow up your HQ, they can't do. Because even if they destroy the Tiger 1, all it does is remove that 1-inch band. It doesn't actually remove the model, right? So this is a wall that's helping to screen off stuff. Now, we don't have a lot of good armor that's good for screening the other half, okay? So we can't fully castle, but we can partial castle, okay? And if we need to, what we want is we just want to have other stuff protecting it as supporting fire units. So what I would do is I would put my other 3 AT rifle teams very close to that whole area, just, making sure they're beyond an inch of each other, but very close to that whole area. So that way, if somebody does try to swoop in, we've got a bunch of point blank pen +2, possibly pen +3 if it's an armored vehicle, sort of shots going in. We got a lot of ways to try to remove stuff that tries to get within range of our HQ. In addition, what we're going to be using is we're going to be using the mortars and such to kind of help to remove objective guardians that are on the opposite side. The first 3 turns are just going to be us trying to shell and hopefully land some hits to try to remove units that are protecting that HQ. All the units that are moving up, we actually aren't going to do much with them. The spot tripping unit can try to hold them down, right? Your rifle sections and your Felgendarmerie can throw some pins down range. We're just trying to buy time. And the last 3 order dice of turn 3, last 4 if you put all your platoon commanders in there instead of the AT rifle team. You're going to hold off as long as you can before you bring in the Kubelwagen with its stuff. And what's going to happen is it's going to perform its order test to try to come in. It's inexperienced, so it's going to start at 8, goes down to 7 to come in from outflank, which is not great, but it has a company commander in it, so it bumps back up to 11. Now, we can't snap to anybody in here because we're off table, okay? But it means the Kubelwagen coming on is very, very likely to occur. And we're going to slide it with an advance order, ideally on a road so we can get 24-inch moves. But if it's only 12, that might be enough because of how close to the center and how close to the table middle line things need to be. There's a very good chance that we can advance with the Kubelwagen and then run the 2 to 3 units that are inside within scoring range of that demolition objective, okay? And the nice thing is we don't have to declare our outflankers until after we know where the HQ side is. So we're going to pick the side that's closer to wherever the HQ link is. And then after we roll our unit up and we drop our men out, ideally, it then becomes the end of the game turn. We're going to pick up 2, maybe 3 dice if you have the platoon commanders escorting the company commander in there. And we're just going to hope for a 4. And I've done this before and botched the rolls, and it went on to another turn. The danger that you're going to have is those units are going to be probably pretty unsupported, okay? Hopefully the mortars are helping. Hopefully the Panzer IIs are helping, right? Hopefully our shots down range are pinning them down. Hopefully they aggressed with a lot of units because they forgot about our units in outflank, or they just didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal or something like that. Hopefully they won't be able to remove it. Just know the units, once they're in range, their thing, if they don't have enemies at point blank range, should just be going down. Just go down. They don't need to do anything else. You don't need to use them to fight. You don't need to use them to shoot at anything. Like, unless you're really worried about a one-man whatever, you really don't need to do that. Your goal is to have dice at the end of the turn that are going to be fighting. In addition, in case the game does not end, do not forget the following turn, pretty early on, to advance or run the Kubelwagen out of there, because if it is ever closer to an enemy unit than it is to an allied unit, we're going to lose that, and we need the order dice, okay? We need those order dice. They don't score for this one, but they are going to determine when we get to do the shooting or when we get to run away or when we get to do other stuff, okay? So my personal recommendation, best as you can, load up as many units in the Kubelwagen as you can that you think is reasonable. The benefit of the AT rifle team is it's a little more survivable if there's a small unit there that tries to cook you off and you fail to blow up the HQ, so it's a little more survivable. It's also a little more survivable in case the Kubelwagen comes in. They get a chance to activate a unit before you can jump anybody out. It's slightly easier if you can, instead have something that has 2 wounds instead of just the 1, and they're wounded on 4s instead of 3s, okay? But in general, that's the plan. It's sneaky. It's under the table, but that's exactly how you should be playing Demolition, and I stand by that. I take no no's. Okay, this will not solve castling. Castling is probably just going to be a draw. I'm just going to be honest. If the enemy is just castling, then, I mean, you're going to have some trouble. There might be a way to score if they tried to castle with something like Sherman or Panzer IV, which is not quite as thick, as something like a Tiger 1 or a Churchill or something like that. And then if you can remove that armored vehicle with the Tiger 1, the Tiger 1 from where it can sit can see that unit and can remove it. Because you now don't need to stay beyond an inch of that thing, you can get right up next to it. You might be able to clip that 3-inch mark with these units, and you might even be out of line of sight of other units because that wreck is so big, okay? You might be able to get away with that stuff. It all depends. Again, play it by ear in terms of what your tactics is on that. And then looking at hold until relieved, this is the, I think about this is the actual last one that has objectives in it. So the fun thing about this one is that there's no requirement that says that infiltrating units have to start beyond 12 inches of the objective. I feel like it should. I feel like it should be treated like top secret demolition, things like that, where they specify that you can't deploy within 12 inches of the thing. But this one doesn't. So the Spotropin unit is ideally going to start within 6 inches of the objective. Start him, you can start him within 3 if that's possible, but at least start it within 6. That way you can easily advance, get to some place that's nice and safe. It gives you a little more leeway in terms of reaching heavy cover. But you want him to ideally be in cover, be the first thing that gets activated, and with 17 order dice, there's a decent chance you're the first draw. Jump in there, claim the objective. From that point on, just go down, right? They don't need to do anything. Then, similar to what we did in key positions, we're just going to roll the Tiger onto it. And then we're going to roll everything else basically on top of it that we really want to. It doesn't really matter. But basically, the rest of the army just guards the Tiger and the Spotropin. That's all we need to do. As long as those units are on it, they're not going to flip it. They're not going to take them out. We're safe. If you can put the Panzer II so they're basically like, beyond an inch, obviously, because we got to follow the rules. But if you can put them so they're right there on the sides of the Tiger, being able to get a side shot on the Tiger is going to be nigh impossible without giving it heavy cover, right? They'd have to go all the way around to try to remove the Tiger, and they need to remove the Tiger in order to win the game. At this point, we put them in a position where they absolutely have to, because otherwise they have not cleared all enemy units of any type within 3 inches of the objective in order to flip control of it, right? And so the Tiger fires ambushes or rallies each turn, right? Just continuing to remove potential threats that might be coming after you. It can ambush in case things are waiting in cover, but you know that they need to get closer in order to do anything to you, or there's infantry coming up or something else like that. Or if it's got a ton of pins on it and you don't want the crew to panic and run, then you can always rally, right? But that's literally all it does. And then Spotropin just go down every single turn. We do not need their 4 rifles to fire. That is not necessary. We've got other stuff that can do small pin generation sort of duties. Their job is just to be a 2+ cover save within scoring range that will keep people from getting close, okay? That's all we need to do. And then finally, we have Breakthrough. Breakthrough is one of the trickier ones because it rewards you for getting units off the board or into the opponent's deployment zone, and we got a lot of really fragile units. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to run units off, but we're also not, okay? We're going to start with the Kubelwagen loaded up with a platoon commander and an AT rifle team. We do not need the company commander in there. We need him near the Tiger, okay? We're also going to start the Spotropin unit deployed pretty far up in a sparsely occupied area of the board. Now, obviously, if people are coming onto the board and we don't see anybody, just choose a spot, okay? But keep in mind also that there's, depending on the pack you're playing on, there's nothing that says you cannot start it within 12 inches of the enemy board edge. And so if there aren't any enemies anywhere nearby, because the only rule with infiltrators is that they have to be beyond 12 inches of the enemy, you could start the Spotropin unit pretty far up. You could start them 9 inches away from the board edge or something else like that. And since they're Gebersjäger, you can run through rough terrain. That's not a problem, right? The only thing you cannot run clean through is a building, okay? Because they got whole rules about how you run into buildings and the fact that you end within the building and so on and so forth, okay? But it means that very early on, your goal is you are going to try to get the Spotropin unit off the board, okay, if you can. You are also going to, very early on turn 1, you are going to go down with the units that are inside the Kubelwagen, okay, as best you can, okay? And in an ideal world, they're never going to do anything other than go down. That's all that they're ever going to do, okay? And then really late in turn 1, in fact, I would leave it to the very, very last order dice that you activate if you possibly can. The Kubelwagen is going to perform a run order to a safe place far up the board. Now, it is worth noting that depending on how the board is set up, and if they have really straight roads that run from long board edge to long board edge, you can modify this plan by activating the Kubelwagen the very first order. If there is nothing blocking that straight road, you've started on that road, you can make it on a, what is that, a 24-inch run becomes a 48-inch run. You can run 3 units clean off the board as early as the first order die activation. Okay? And if that's the case, that is exactly what I would do. I would just give the order to the Kubelwagen. It's part of first wave or it's already on the table, so you don't need to worry about order testing unless you've already suffered pins. As the first one, you shouldn't have any pins on you. And as long as the enemy didn't start with a bunch of units on ambush waiting for you to pull this shenanigan, you can perform the run order, get 3 units off, which is a lot of points, right? That's 9 points already toward the end objectives. The spot your pin unit tries to get off the board, at least tries to end up in the deployment zone. That is 10 points, which means we don't have to run a single other unit off the board. We don't have to move up with anything. We are going to hold everybody else back in defense. And our entire job is going to be pound the snot out of anything that crosses the halfway line. We do not want them ending in our deployment zone. We do not want them ending off of our deployment zone edge. So our job is just to knock out every single thing that comes at us. Heavy mortars are not the greatest at this, but you'd be surprised. They can do okay, especially if you can lock down units and force them to go down or rally against things like, say, Panzer IIs or the Tiger 1 or something else like that. Don't forget, your Tiger 1 can do infantry damage. You've got either 8 shots from 2 machine guns or 4 shots plus a 3-inch HE template. That is a fantastic lineup for trying to take out infantry, especially big veteran squads, okay? And so you've got the tools to play a good, solid defense, hold people out, pin down things that are moving up, remove things as they end up stopping, use your tools. You've got a lot to work with here. And I think you can win on breakthrough. And that's all 6 scenarios. I think you stand a reasonable chance to win with this army, okay? Now, and it's only at 1,000 points. If you have 1,250, you have 250 more points to play with. So what would I do? I would basically keep the list as it is. I mean, I like a lot of the stuff. There's some stuff that I would probably add. So like, I might consider, if I have more points, maybe we even drop the spot pin unit and we take a Cossack or an SS cavalry unit or something like that in order to kind of fill the same role for a few more points, but you get more mobility, which is great. It allows us to have a little more of a competitive edge on something like Top Secret because we could run 18 inches up, grab the objective. Yeah, they're going to shoot at us. Yeah, they're going to remove us. If it's an SS cavalry unit that's veteran, I mean, like how many guys are you actually going to realistically lose before the Tiger comes up and gives you cover? Like you got options, right? You know, that you don't typically have with the spot pin unit because of how Top Secret works. You can also add 2 more armored vehicles. I would seriously consider doing that and just max out the armored platoon. If you can upgrade your Panzer IIs to Panzer II Luchses, if you want to add things like Panzer Is just for some better anti-infantry removal, working down veterans, things like that, that's fine. The Horch field car with the autocannon, I've been playing around with a lot recently. That is a very cheap amount of firepower, and it gives you flak protection, which again is one of the things that we don't have a lot of now. And if you were to add 2 of those, 4 shots against enemy aircraft is not particularly great, but it's a reasonable chance of driving them off, okay? There's other ways that I would consider doing flak that I think might work better. We'll talk about those a little bit lower, but if you were looking for something cheap to throw into your armored platoon to kind of flesh it out, you can do that. The big thing is, because so many of our shenanigans with Tiger 1 require us to go first, I would shoot for 19 to 20 order dice. This means you need 2 to 3 more than you had in the last list, okay? So whatever you're adding, make sure you're at least adding 2 new units. You're not just bumping up old units, okay? I would also consider adding machine gun teams or additional mortars to your heavy weapons platoon, and specifically 2 medium machine gun teams. I would personally probably just purchase them regular because I think it's not bad, and I would pintle mount them, okay? If you need to save some points, inexperienced 35-point 7-shot machine guns are fantastically good, even with the -1 to hit. Pintle mount them and make them 40 points each. They're still fantastically good, and that is now 7 shots against aircraft each. The one problem with taking them inexperienced is it means now you're looking for 6s or possibly super 6s in the case of pins to try to drive off those aircraft instead of 5s or 6s, which is way more reliable with 14 shots. So personally, I would take them regular from a flak perspective. I don't really care so much about the pin generating downrange. They're going to do just fine on that regardless. But if you're looking to do flak protection, I think you're going to find that regular is going to serve you better, and it's only 15 to 30 points more if you're taking 2 of them, right? So it's really not that bad. You can also bump up the infantry, as we talked about before. Like, you could take, a cavalry unit in place of the Gebersjäger unit. You might consider even upgrading those, Strafe Battalion units and maybe even getting rid of the Felgendarmer unit. Just be careful because, again, like, we want to add order dice to the total. So, just don't go too crazy, right? Some machine guns are fun. A lot of stuff's fun. But it's going to eat into that 250 really, really fast. And a lot of our anti-armor is only pin +2. So just be really careful about what you're doing there. And then finally, and this is a reasonable request because they're relatively cheap and we do need to add extra order dice in order to make this competitive, consider adding a chaplain. The chaplain's nice because he's a great way of helping to remove some pins on units that may need to reliably activate. And while, yes, an opponent can go after him, one, as we mentioned in the chaplain video, it's possible people are going to go Geneva Convention and they're not going to shoot at a chaplain. They're going to try to take him in close combat because that's the honorable thing to do under the rules of war. That is, again, not required under the rules, okay? So people are perfectly free to shoot at him. When I play an army, I tend to follow the Geneva Convention. So I'm not going to shoot your medic. I'm not going to shoot your chaplain. Okay. I'm going to take them in close combat. I'm going to win, and I'm going to remove them. Okay. Is how that's going to work. But I'm going to capture them. We'll bring them back to our side. They'll work on some of our boys and stuff like that. We'll be honorable about it. But if nothing else, the ability to be able to remove pins on units that may need to be able to activate reliably is a really, really good idea. It's also another one-man unit that you can drop into a Kubelwagen if you need to run somebody off a board and you don't care about, right? I mean, if you don't want to lose a morale bubble from a platoon commander and you want to just run a Kubelwagen off, in Breakthrough, you could put the chaplain in there instead if you really want to, right? It means you could run a chaplain and 2 platoon commanders off and score 4 units. In which case, you don't have to run the Spotropen unit off. You can keep a veteran unit for backfield, or even just, again, being a threat and distracting fire, being bait, basically, for the enemy if you want to. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can do just by taking a chaplain because it's a one-man, relatively cheap order dice that you can add. It's helping in a lot of ways to cover a lot of our bases. I think the priority for me would probably be the 2 machine gun teams, so call it 110 points, probably a chaplain, and then if you have roughly 100 points extra, I would look at maybe adding like a Panzer 1 and bumping up the 2 Panzer 2s. That's probably what I would do, which would bring you to a Bonnie 20 order dice. You'd have 4 armored vehicles. You'd have really good anti-infantry. Your anti-armor is still perfectly serviceable. It's in some ways a little more reliable because you've still got a lot of pin generating, but you're also suffering a few less pins in return. You've got more pins going down against enemy infantry teams that may have anti-tank tools, so you might actually be doing okay. And again, you still got the durable center mark. So this is how I would play a Tiger 1. Again, multiple people mentioned this to me, so if you made it this far, I want to send a special hello to David, to Sasha, to Jimmy, and to other people who have asked me about running a Tiger 1. It is not my playstyle. I own a Tiger 1. I plan to give it away to people at the next Bolt Action Basic Training that I'm going to be hosting here in the new year. And so I do not plan to run this, but I have a 3D print file. So from a cost perspective, there's not a reason for me not to have one in my collection. And so who knows, maybe I will do this. Maybe I will do a challenge going to an event where I will run a Tiger 1 just to see if you can go 3-0 with a Tiger using the strategies that we talked about here. But what do you think? Do you think that these things work? Is this mind-blowing? Do you have new thoughts on how to make this happen? Let us know down in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Oh, hold on. Last thing. Austin. I was talking with Austin about this recently too, and I forgot to mention you. Huge shout out to Austin. Thank you very much. Some class that I have, I wouldn't run it veteran. I would run it regular. That's my big change, Austin, that I would recommend. Okay. But yes, if you have thoughts, I'm sure you do. Please let us know down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.